Are you looking to build a cloud computing career? Do you want to learn the fundamental skills necessary for a career in cloud computing? Well, if so, this video is for you. Hi, my name is Michael Gibbs, and I've been working in technology for over 25 years. I've worked in networking, I've worked in security, I've worked in cloud computing. And one thing I will tell you, when you understand the network, the data center, and operating systems, you understand the cloud. And that's why it's so easy for people like me that were building clouds since long before they were called clouds to transition into cloud computing. And it's so hard for people that have never worked on a network or a data center to make the career transition into cloud computing. So in today's video, we're going to focus on Linux. Why are we excited about Linux? Well, Linux is going to be the predominant operating system you're going to work with in a server environment. Mostly because it's free, it's highly reliable, it works great, and it's highly tunable. So when you start working with networking appliances such as firewalls, which you will still be using like virtual firewalls from other enterprise vendors on an EC2 instance in the AWS cloud, for example, through the marketplace, the better your understanding of Linux, the better it works. Plus you're going to be dealing with web servers, you're going to be dealing with database servers, application servers, and chances are most of them are going to be Linux. So we want you to learn Linux. It is a fundamental skill for the cloud architect. Now there's lots of ways to learn Linux. Our preferred approach for Linux is to basically do what we call Linux immersion therapy. So we like you to take your primary computer, assuming you are able to do it and you don't have a reason or a specific application that forces you to use Windows, and that's a small population that actually is forced to use Windows for an application like a video editor, for example, then switch your primary computer to Linux. First, back up your data, because when you switch it to Linux, you're going to lose all your data. Switch it to Linux and then work with this Linux computer for 3 to 6 months, and in the process, you'll learn Linux. But don't just use Linux. Install containers on your Linux operating system, install a network card, and set up a proxy server or a firewall. Get some experience under the hood with the Linux operating system. So what we're going to do now, we're going to do a very simple install of Linux, so you know how to do it, so you can switch your system to Linux if you've not already done this, and you can get some Linux immersion therapy. Now to start the install process, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to create a bootable USB drive. After we create a bootable USB drive from the Linux install that we download, then we have to enter our BIOS, and we have to make sure our BIOS is going to boot up directly from the USB drive that we created. So you can see I booted into my BIOS. On my particular server, it's F12. On yours, it could be F12, it could be delete, it could be F10, it could be F2, it could be different. So for your computer, figure out how to boot into the BIOS. And once you boot into the BIOS, set it to boot off of the disk that you installed your Linux install disk. Now at this point, your system's going to boot off of the drive, and it's going to do a disk check to make sure that your disk is healthy. You wouldn't want to install an operating system on a healthy disk, so it's going to do a disk check and make sure your file system and your disks are healthy to make sure you can get a good, safe, clean install. Now what's going to happen is the installer is going to load. And the installer will load, and here we're going to have the opportunity to try the Linux operating system or to install it. In this particular case, I picked Ubuntu version 20. I think it's 04 or 06, whatever the case may be. We're going to install it because we want to use it. So we're going to click install, and it's a pretty easy install, and it's also a pretty fast install. We're going to select the language, which in our case is English. Again, it's a pretty fast install. We're going to do a normal installation, and we're going to also download updates, and we're going to also recommend installing third-party software updates. In other words, if you have a driver for a specific video card, it will install it automatically for you in this way. So we're going to recommend you click continue. And realistically speaking, it may ask us a few more questions. We'll answer the questions. It's a relatively straightforward install. Many years ago, when I started working with Linux, about 20 some years ago, it was a much more complicated install. But in today's modern world, it's quite easy. So we're going to wait till the next step. And then at some point, what we're probably going to do once we get all of our things checked and all the things we're going to enter, we're going to speed this up so we don't keep you on the video for too long. The next option we're going to get is, do we want to install it along with Windows, or do we want to erase the disk? In our particular circumstances, we want to erase the disk. If you're going to erase the disk, make sure you back up all your data first. As part of Linux immersion therapy, we typically erase the disk because that way we're forced to use Linux for a little while, and in the process of being forced to use it, you get real good at it. So in this case, we're going to erase the disk, then we'll click continue. Then they're going to ask us which drive we want to put it. In this particular case, I have a 1 terabyte NVMe drive. It's going to be a super fast disk access, which is going to enable me to install a bunch of containers and other cool things along the way too, and still have the performance to do it. Now it's going to give you some warnings that are going to say, basically, by the way, if you do this, it's going to erase everything. And then realistically speaking, we'll click continue. We'll enter our region, which will set up our time zone. We'll have to do something, so make sure you pick a name. So my name is Mike, so I'm going to just pick Mike because I want it to be really easy. And then pick a good, strong password. Make sure it's a good one. And then it's going to copy your files over. And realistically speaking, that's it. We're going to get to a point, and at the point it's going to say, click here to reboot, remove your install drives. We're going to do that, and we will have a fully up system. So what we're going to do is we're going to pause this, and as soon as the systems are up, we're going to show you the system and see that it's completely installed. Now what you'll see is the system comes back up. All you need to do is log in, and you should be off to the races and ready to use your new Linux install. There you go. You can now use Linux as your primary operating system. Thank you so much for watching this video. Let me tell you about some offerings we do. Every Monday and every Thursday, we have a free Cloud Architect How to Get Your First Job webinar. During this webinar, we'll talk about things like what employers desire, how to be the employer's ideal candidate, and things to do to make sure you're cloud competent to get you cloud hired. We do this for free. We do it on Mondays and Thursdays. We have a free AWS Certified Solution Architect Associate ebook. I'll drop the link in the description below. It is everything you need to become an AWS Certified Solution Architect Associate, and it's completely free. Every Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. GMT, we actually have a free AWS mentoring session where if you're working on the AWS Certified Solution Architect Associate exam, bring any questions you might have to us and we'll help you through them. It could be anything as simple as what is the difference between a network, ACL, and a security group, where you can ask us about EC2 instance, ask us about S3, anything on the AWS Certified Solution Architect Associate. You don't need to be one of our students. We welcome everyone. We just want to help the cloud architect community. We're all about building high quality cloud computing careers. So please join us on some of our free services. I want to thank you so much for watching this video, and we look forward to seeing you on a new cloud computing video next Wednesday. Take care and be well.